because I'm still debating whether I even wanted to do a live cast tonight, but I'm going to anyhow. There's something about the quality of the video and the audio that makes it suck to do a live cast, but I guess that doesn't really matter since most of my content is, well, it is what it is. So, welcome to my one person who's here. As usual, I have not prefaced this live cast with any prior advertising or anything, so I have to go grab a few things. I'm just going to leave this running, and you can come back to the video in 5 minutes and see who's joined, and or nobody. And I'm going to go with it anyway. Hey, Chris, you can just come back in 5 minutes. I'd be much obliged. I have to go grab a few things, and I'm just going to have a little chat about some thoughts about life. All right, I think I'm all settled now, for what it's worth. Hey, I've got a few more people here. Welcome back, and my apologies for the delay here. I'm going to go ahead and turn down all of my notifications because I just heard my phone make a noise. And there we go. I think we're set now. Hi, welcome. This is my true disorganized self, and I've always found the best off a live cast is by being completely non-attentive to my subscribers and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be here on a live cast," and then take off for 5 minutes and then come back. Anyway, here we are, the podcast for my 15-minute free thinking. So Welcome to the 15-minute free thinking podcast with your host, Carpo. And today I'm going to be talking, well, if the title didn't give it away, the cost of life. And this comes in many forms. Now, I'm going to make this disclaimer before I start. This may or may not go the way I want it to go. In other words, when I start at Livecast, usually it's spontaneous. I don't plan for it. I'm not, mentally ready for it. So I just jump in. And sometimes it doesn't work out and I just say, later, never mind. And I delete those. So a lot of my Livecasts never even get posted. And I know that's not the way that a lot of people do business. That's not the way a lot of YouTubers. They want as many people as they can to know that they're going to do a live cast. And then they have a planned out itinerary of what they're going to talk about. And in my case, that is neither or. And I also really don't give a shit. I do, but I feel like the thoughts come through better if I'm not scripting everything I say to you. And that's for my sake as well as yours. Because ultimately, when I talk about the cost of life, I'm talking about not just money, obviously. I'm talking about the cost of everything in life. The cost of being alive. This burden that we have to, the burdens that we have to take, rather, in order to just be a human being in this world. And often we can try to escape and force ourselves to go live out in the woods away from people, or, I guess live a life that's more more conducive to living in nature. But ultimately, you're going to face the same kinds of problems. There's always a cost, whether you're alone, whether you're with other people. So what started this? Was I thinking about, the costs of relationships or high value or knowledge or anything like that? No. Of course not. I was thinking about the cost of beer. That's where this all started. I was walking back from the store earlier. And I went down there, and for a 6-pack of microbrew, it was $12. And I thought, damn, that's a lot. And I've been buying these like tall 19.2 ounce cans for $3. And, I did the math in my head. It's about the same. But I thought, it's actually cheaper buying by the larger cans. And I started thinking, what does it matter? It's just a few pennies. Why am I so frugal? I've spent my whole life being frugal. Now, some people may say, well, if you're cheap, why not just buy cheap beer? No. And it got me leading me into these thoughts about beer itself. And how some people would say, well, I drink, Bud or Bud Light or something, and it's cheaper. It'd be like, well, the actual alcohol content is much higher on these, therefore you're getting more of a buzz by buying microbrews. And then the leading answer by most people I'd say that to would be, oh, well, I don't just drink it for the buzz. I drink it for the flavor. In which my response would be, if you drink it for the flavor and you're drinking Bud Light, then you have no taste. That's kind of the joke, I guess. Bud Light or Coors Light or something. Like you don't drink that shit for the flavor. It's like water. But then some people would say, well, what about non-alcoholic beer? And I would say the only people who drink non-alcoholic beer, hands down, are people who used to drink real beer. So here we are. We've gotten the beer story out of the way. Now we can move on to the rest of it. I enjoy my beer, and to me it's worth paying $2 a beer. Not a big deal, right? When I was a kid, when I first started drinking beer, right, 25 years ago, whatever, it was about $6 to $8 maybe for a 6-pack. You might pay up to $1.50, $1.20, something like that. Now it's $2. Inflation, it is what it is. You just pay it. This isn't about beer, obviously. This is about the cost of everything and the frugal nature of wanting to save money on things. And I have always been the kind of guy who tries to save money any way I can. I don't want to spend extra money on gas. I don't want to spend extra money on junk at a concert, for example. But then there are certain things that I will totally spend money on and not even think twice about. And mind you, I'm talking about the financial aspects right now, but of course this goes much deeper than that, and I'll get into that. And feel free to interject, of course. I just want to say hello to everybody. Hello, Chris. Hello, Eric. Hello, Starling. Hello, Mikey. Hello, Leslie. Yes, it is getting expensive. Hello, Kapuxi 1000. It's good to see you. Leslie, always looking for the best deal. Yeah, and that's where I'm coming from on this is often I'm the kind of person who is always looking for a good deal, often at the cost of quality. And but I won't do this in many instances. For example, I'm a carpenter, okay? When I go, I do not go to Harbor Freight to buy my drill bits and tools. Mind you, if you don't know, Harbor Freight is like the generic, what do you call it? The Dollar Tree of carpentry tools. You go there and you get a power tool that you might use once that you're never going to want to use again because you don't want to pay top dollar for the high-end brand. Or you go there to buy some cheap bits or saw blades you're going to wear out quickly on flooring or something. But honestly, you find that these bits, drill bits, saw blades, all this are built so shitty that in the end you spend more money, right? And I've never been the kind of guy who wants to shop cheap on my tools because I want my quality finished work to be worth it. In other words, if you ruin a piece of carpentry, if you ruin a piece of wood because you have a shitty blade, not only do you lose money on the blade, you lose money on the actual. You may save a little on the blade, but it dies quicker and then you waste more on the material that you're building with. Being frugal comes with costs. That's the cost of costs. And we end up spending a lot more than we need to on certain things and others, you know. But there's a cost to everything. There's a cost to relationships. There's a cost to, as I said earlier, ignoring other people, or a cost to being obsessed with needing other people's attention. So there are some people out there that are very dependent. I'm not going to say codependent. That would be, two people dependent on each other. Codependency has its benefits. In a world gone mad, honestly, having two people who care about each other, even if they are codependent, isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when an individual is dependent or obsessed and needs other people to feel comfortable, needs other people, just strangers in general, to be complete, that can be a tricky one. And that comes down to the cost of having emotions. And this is something I thought about a lot. In fact, I watched a show recently about psychopathy. How many people are psychopathic? And it was this doctor doing a study into, the idea that 1 to 2% of all people are psychopathic, that have psychopathic traits, meaning they truly, really don't care about others. They can feign that they care about others, but they don't. And it's kind of a, they're trying to pretend or put on a face or act as if they're like other people. And we all guaranteed no one of them. And the funny thing was the doctor looked at all these brain scans and he pointed out one guy. He's like, this guy's obviously psychopathic to the point he shouldn't even be in society. And then his crew let him know that that was his brain scan. So in other words, it was the doctor himself that was psychopathic. And it was kind of a funny look into, oh shit, maybe even people who think that they're aware aren't as aware as they think they are. That's a tough one to navigate. Tough nut to crack on that one. But the point I wanted to make about that was that one of the defining characteristics of a psychopath is that they're not aware of other people's emotions, that they're not concerned about other people's well-being. And so there's a cost that comes with having emotions, as I said, that you feel attached to people, attached to ideas. But there's also a cost that comes with not having emotions. And if you nurture psychopathy, and I truly believe, they say that something like 20% of all kids are basically defined as psychopaths. I mean, until they're taught otherwise. So I can only imagine that if you don't foster the proper neural networks and the pathways in their brains to let kids develop to be good humans if you're not parenting them and teaching them what matters, even if you think you're doing the right thing, a lot of parents, they may talk, for example, a family that talks about being tolerant and peaceful and raising their kids, and then their kids hear them screaming about politics in the next room. And the kids know a lot more than you think they know. And they're listening. They're always listening. So even though you might think you're raising a kid to be a good emotional sport, they might end up being a complete asshole. But environment plays a huge role in whether kids become psychopaths, and some people would argue, well, no, that's sociopath. That psychopath is something you're born with. I just don't, I don't think neuroscience really understands it, and we're using terminology that, of course, is semantics, right? What does it matter? All that we're trying to define is the fact that some people display very little emotion. Others, they display the emotion, but it's complete bullshit. They don't really have your best interests at heart. They don't care about your feelings or your needs. It's weird. It's a weird feeling when you care about people immensely that you've never met. It's a strange thing. And I always have this weird, strong feeling towards people who I see suffering that I've never met. And there are people who just turn that off and just don't have any empathy for other people. And, I feel sorry for them. But if anyone's felt strange over the past few days, there was actually a geomagnetic storm going on right now. It's a G4 class, which is like the 4 out of 5 in the geomagnetic storm classes. Pretty high. And here in Oregon, or rather Washington, across the bridge, they say that we might be able to see the aurora tonight. And unfortunately, it's cloudy here, and I'm kind of disappointed because if it weren't cloudy, I'd be driving out east to see the aurora. But, maybe the cost would be too high to pay for the gas. So we're talking about costs. I don't know what to think about all this shit. I really don't. I'm just going to say hello to everybody and read through the comments again here to let people know that it is live. I've had people come on and they're like, is this actually live? Because so many YouTubers will make a video and then post it live and it's not actually live. I think that's kind of cheesy as fuck, but that's me. Mikey, good to see you. Ouch. The heck? I got stung or bit or something. My hand's got this ow. That's weird. Like a sliver or a bite. Just popped out of nowhere. Getting eaten. Okay, what did it say? Reminds me of the McKenna quote, the cost of sanity in society is a certain degree of alienation. That's a great one, Mikey. I love McKenna's brain. And for those out there who don't know it, he's talking about Terence McKenna, who was a psychedelic advocate and entrepreneur and everything else. I don't necessarily buy into all his theories. The stoned ape theory has some credence, but that's another story altogether. But ouch, what the hell was that? It hurts. You know when you get stung by something? I wonder if I just got stung. That's weird. But anyway, fucking die on a live cast. That would be so weird. Weird for you, not for me. But Terence McKenna was awesome. He wrote some amazing books. There was one I read called the La Chorrera Experiment, where he went to Mexico and him and his brother Dennis were looking for these ayahuasca, takers in the jungle, but they ended up meeting up with this other tribe that was going to lead them, but to that place. But then they found mushrooms instead, and I don't remember what kind, large psychedelic mushrooms that they ate and stayed up for a few weeks and talked to aliens and God, supposedly. And, look, psychedelics were something I wanted to make this video about. We could totally go down that route, but if you all are interested. But I took some really good acid this last weekend at the Phish concert. And I had an amazing experience. Then I came back from the show and into the motel with some good family, rather, and tried ketamine for the first time, something I've held back on. Ketamine therapy is something that has just blown up over the last several years. I've been holding on to a gram of ketamine since before the ketamine therapy even came out, like almost a decade. Like it had almost gone bad, but somebody else gave me some of theirs and I tried it. The combination was amazing. The whole room was swimming. I was moving down a river with the people I was talking to, and yet my voice and my mind was so clear and coherent, and I was picking up on everything I was hearing, and I was like, all the costs of life, all the bullshit that I go through, this moment right here is worth it. And I'm going to be honest with you, this moment I had this last weekend was, at the time, I said it was the most, amazing moment of my life. And I'm trying to kind of gauge it compared to other psychedelic experiences. I've had much more intense experiences in the mind, but this one was so visually intense and so emotionally intense. The people I was talking to, that I was able to open up myself in ways that I really needed to, and also accept new information from others that I needed. And that was so worth it. And that really comes down to the cost. As I said, you want a new pair of shoes, you're going to pay a little money. It might be painful to spend the money, but you're going to have comfy shoes. Same way with psychedelics. For me, it's never about the cost of the psychedelic. I mean, I always have some accessible. It's the cost of the time it takes to take it, to go through the experience, and then to have the time to recover from it. Right? I've got a job, I've got kids. I can't just go party all the time. So when I get to take a psychedelic, it can be fucking awesome. And it's always about people. That's what it always comes down to. And it always comes back to family and friends, to connections with other people. Taking psychedelics is the most profound experience I've had in my life when it comes to understanding truth and God and the universe, if you will. And those experiences have built a lot of who I am. In fact, if I'd never taken acid when I was younger, I probably would be a totally different person. That changed my perspective on everything. Not because it taught me anything, but because it removed the barriers in my mind from learning what I already knew and what I already needed to know. Psychedelics are highly recommended. Highly recommended by me. All right, that's one down. I got one more beer and then I'm going to go. I just told myself I was going to do at least an hour-long live cast tonight and just kind of get some shit off my chest. And also, as I said, answer any questions y'all may have. Whoa, what happened there? Ha. Emotional integrity and independence. Indeed, my friend, indeed. Nature versus nurture. Hey, thanks, Capuxia. I appreciate that. Nicholas says, go down that route. Leslie says, I enjoy tripping several times a year. Nice. Yeah, for me, it's maybe once or twice. And, hey, I try. I try more often. I was going to take something tonight, and I really just didn't feel up for it. I'm very cautious about when I take anything. But I was going to take some MDMA, and that's a little more demanding on my body. But anyway, hello, Cindy, and hello, Positon. And yes, it's good to see you all. I really appreciate you all being here tonight. I like having small live casts that I can really feel like I'm interacting with the people instead of just having this flow of bullshit from people that just want to argue in the comments section and not even really hear it. Which brings me to this weird, there's this guy that this relates to the fact that right now we're in the middle of a huge solar storm, G4, and I felt it. I had weird dreams last night. I was telling my friends, if you had weird dreams or it felt weird, that's probably why. And they're like, oh my God, how did you know I felt so out of place? And solar flares have a very strange effect on people, or geostorms. We could see the aurora borealis from here if I could see through the clouds, but I can't. Or maybe we could, anyway. But it's weird the way that solar storms can affect our minds and our interactions. And I was talking with my friends about that, and yeah, I don't remember the point of why I brought that up. There was a point. I had a brain fart. It's so weird when you have a brain fart when you're not used to it, because usually I can carry on my thoughts and pull myself out of that, but I don't remember where I was going, and I'm sure it will come back briefly here in a moment. But the one thing that psychedelics have taught me is that we're all connected. Or I should say that psychedelics have reminded me of is that not just we're all connected, but that we're all one organism. But that, because we had this really deep discussion about existence, and I was talking with somebody who was younger but very wise, saying, that we're all really just the same thing and we're all source. And I was saying, but at the same time, nature decided it wanted us to be different. In other words, the one thing I've learned that I completely disagree with many of the hippie community or the alternative or the spiritual, if you want to use that term, community, is that I don't buy into the idea that negativity is something you can define. And I don't believe that you can define good and bad in such black and white terms. It's like without some of the adversity we have in life, we'd never be the people we are. And that's what I mean when I posted the title of The Cost of Life. It's the cost that we pay for everything good. There's something that has to be paid. There's a toll that has to be paid for us to live a good life, for us to be happy. And it's going to depend on your circumstance and your situation and who you are, where you live, who you live with, what you want out of life. Do you want money? Do you want to be rich, richy rich? I mean, that's going to be a totally different approach. There's plenty of that bullshit out there. If I thought that being rich would make me happier, I'd probably work towards being rich. But every time I move up a little bit in this world, or I'm able to even dream about getting more, the property my wife and I have been looking for, we're fooling ourselves looking at $750,000 properties. Like there's no way in hell, but God damn, could we do it? Could we get other people to go in? Could we rent out another house on the property? And there's these dreams that come with moving forward in life. But if you have everything, if it's all given to you, you see how some of these trust fund kids turn into complete assholes because they don't really suffer financially. But there's a price to be paid. There's a cost for being wealthy. There's always a cost. God, there's a cost for everything. So if you can step back and just be like, I'm good, there's something to be said about that. It's harder when you have a relationship or a partner because you're both working towards the same thing maybe, but slightly different, and you have different discussions about it. The only way to truly be free of that is to be a total loner, not interact with anyone, and then you'll be totally miserable. So you've got to really move between these things, these energy points. Ultimately, we are all energy. It's just we don't understand how that operates. It's on a level that's way beyond our capacity. Everything has a cost. Everything. Everything. Weed's a lot cheaper, though. I'll tell you that. I remember when my homie used to come over to my house and I'd spend $250 to $300 for an ounce of weed. Now it's like less than $100 and sometimes like $50 or less. It's never the top quality for that price, but sometimes. I can't say never, but sometimes. I should say very rarely, but it's good enough. I paid twice as much for Mexican weed when I was a kid with seeds in it. So we've come a long way. And for the generation coming up, cannabis stores are just a normal thing. But if you consider the fact that in a few years you'll be able to go into a shop and buy psychedelic mushrooms or LSD, we're moving forward quickly. And psychedelics have become decriminalized in my state and in Oregon, and probably elsewhere. Pretty much, I think Oakland has completely decriminalized a lot of things. I know a lot of people say it brings more crime and more problems. Maybe, maybe not. But what it does do is frees up jail space for people who are actual criminals. Locking people up for drugs doesn't do anything. It doesn't help the problem. So save up that space for the muggers and car thieves and rapists because honestly, drugs aren't the biggest priority for most people these days. Meth, heroin, fentanyl, of course, huge problems. Um, Cocaine, not so much anymore. It's just kind of a yuppies drug, but it's also a hippie drug, believe it or not. But anyway, the point here is that, as Mr. Mackey would say, drugs are bad, okay, but people are going to use them anyway, and you're not going to be able to avoid that. So the best we can do is just kind of let people do what they're going to do because you're not going to create new heroin users by legalizing it or tolerating it. That's kind of a misconception. They said the same thing about weed, didn't happen. Pot, legalizing pot didn't create more pot smokers. What it did was allowed the people who wanted to be pot smokers to smoke pot again. So maybe it increased a slight bit, but you know, it's not cool anymore, for teenagers to smoke pot behind the school. Oh, fuck. They're all smoking fucking. Yeah. No, they're all vaping and snorting ketamine these days. No, hopefully not, but a lot of them are. Um, I don't approve of any drugs for young people. I want to make that very clear. I think young people should steer clear of all substances until they're of sound mind to be able to handle themselves. I mean, sure, people are going to have beers with their kids and maybe even go on trips, journeys, let their kids experiment. That's a parent's choice. I'm not going to get into that. But in general, I think kids should not be using these substances and build your brain, build who you want to be, and then create the person you are. But, for me, a huge part of who I became when I was younger was due to copious amounts of LSD. I mean, almost every other weekend, it seemed like overnight I was wearing tie dyes and had long hair and was going down to Pioneer Square looking for the guy with the doses so I could. And then I was buying sheets at a time and then several sheets and then going up to dead shows with bare feet, cutting up sheets in the sun to sell at the dead shows. Crazy stories. I've got some fun stories of hitchhiking to California and then driving down and coming back with some young girl that I didn't know she was young, only like 14. I was like 17 or 18, but still, that was a huge difference back then. And picking up some hitchhikers and then giving us gel tabs and just going, like, taking doses that I won't even take today. And I have taken large doses, like a 10 strip. I've taken 7.5 grams with my friend. Well, I mean, we split a half ounce, so we each take over 7 grams of golden teachers mushrooms under the stars. And yeah, wild experience. So, psychedelics really did help define kind of who I was. They allowed me to be funky and be myself because I realized the ego is just an illusion. And in fact, reading some books, one of them by, I think it was Timothy Leary and Ralph Metzner, if I'm not mistaken. I bought it at, I think, Powell's Books when I was back in the 90s, early 90s, and it was called The Psychedelic Experience, based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So apparently, learning about this years later, and I need to get the book back because I haven't had it since, but it was how to prepare for a trip. And it was all about set and setting and going through what they call the bardos, which are like kind of the lives or the layers of existence, the process of death, if you will. And it was amazing because I was like, oh, okay. So you need to be prepared mentally and physically for this, eat properly and whatnot. But you also um, have to have the right place to trip at. You can't just be going out to a party taking acid. And that's where a lot of kids went wrong. Taking psychedelics at events, that can be fun, but it's got to be the right event. It's got to be the right atmosphere, and you've got to have the right after party, the right aftercare, and especially the next day when you're going into reflection mode, when you're really going into psychedelic. Because the next day is when you do all the processing. It's not the night that you take the psychedelic. That needs to be very clear. I don't like to romanticize these drugs. I mean, like, I enjoy watching psychedelic videos. I've been friends with, well, internet acquaintances with Psyched Substance, the YouTuber, for a long time, and we messaged back and forth a couple times years back about doing a podcast together, and I'd still love to do that. But I don't want to diss his channel, but in order for him to be profitable, he had to start talking about things that were a little more like, holy crap, I took this and saw this, and have kind of the clickbaity thumbnails, which is fine. I love the guy. Don't get me wrong, bro, if you're out there. It's just, I feel like psychedelics are going to be so commercialized, and I revere them so much. Is why I don't talk about them. It's not because I'm scared of YouTube coming down on me. They're past that now. You can talk about mushrooms and LSD and DMT for that matter, and I've done lots of DMT too. I don't talk about it because it feels awkward. I have kids of my own. I don't want them doing these drugs without my understanding and approval and the proper age and all these things. But I honestly have a strong feeling that if everybody did LSD as an adult, it would be a different world. A lot of people know Steve Jobs, took acid, dozens times, at least a dozen times, as he said, but probably more. He attributes some of his innovations to it. There's a whole long list of inventors and biologists, scientists of all different types who have taken this drug and been like, oh my God, and had breakthroughs. And it's so obvious to anybody who takes it themselves. If you take LSD with a group of people who are somewhat intelligent and you start talking in a dark room with the right, dim lighting, you'll laugh your asses off, you'll have a good time, and you'll come up with probably the next revolution, of ideas. But it'll seem more important than it is if you take too much. So in other words, what LSD does is it allows you to really see things for what they are. But if you take too much, it makes you think things are more important than they are. And I can't really get into the science behind that because I don't understand it. It's anybody who's been a long-term psychedelic user knows that at one time or another they had a deep trip. They had an idea, they wrote it down or recorded it on their voice recorder. This happens also with dissociatives like nitrous oxide or ketamine. When you're kind of going into the K-hole, or when you're losing consciousness, you have these epiphanies that you think are important. Sometimes they go into repeating patterns, and you think this is so important. But if you actually have a recorder and you document it, you think this is stupid. It's not important. But if you don't write it down, then in the back of your mind, you're like, I had this great idea, man. It was like going to solve all the world's problems. And this is where you get the estimated profit, which is a song by the Grateful Dead from back in the day. And the song was about this prophet on a burning shore. It's about a guy in California who basically took too many psychedelics and thinks he's God. It's the God complex that comes with psychedelics. There's a term for it, and it doesn't matter what it is. The fact is, some people think that they see the truth. They start getting apophenia and pareidolia, seeing faces, seeing patterns, interconnectedness, and things that aren't really connected. Even though, and this is where it gets fucked up, everything's connected. Everything around us is connected. You can't just say, oh, this connection isn't real, because it is. Every fucking thing around you is connected. All the molecules can morph into one another. They can change shape. Fucking A, the body you have right now is not the same body you had 10 years ago. What does that mean? I mean, really think about that for a minute. Every single fucking atom in your body has changed in 10 years. We just accept it. It's just, oh well, that's just how things are. Weird. Cells replicate and change and die off. But why? Why do things exist at all? And that's where I think psychedelics help you to kind of ponder that world of why. But ultimately come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter. Because knowledge out there isn't what's important. It's what's in here. It's in your heart. Not just in your mind, not what you know. If you had a choice between being having a good, strong gauge of emotions, but not being very smart, or being highly intelligent but having no emotions. Which would you choose? And anybody with a heart would choose a heart, right? I mean, you could be the Tin Man, you could be the Straw Man. It doesn't matter, Scarecrow, whatever the fuck. You've got to have both. But if I had to give up one, I definitely want to keep my emotions, because the heart and those feelings are what bring us closer to each other. They are what make life worth living. I cannot imagine being a cold, calculated, money-grubbing person who's just all about cash. I can't imagine being a person who could look another human being in the eye and lie to them so I could rip them off for their money. That, to me, the snakes are like the wolves, if you will. They're the worst people. They are like the scum of the earth. Like, if every one of those people could disappear off the face of the planet tomorrow, I'd be all for it. If every predator, and I'm not just talking about sexual predator or abuser, I'm talking about anybody who preys on other individuals for a living or for pleasure, especially pleasure, I would have no problem with them all just being shipped off to Mars, atmosphere or not. And that sounds harsh, but that's utilitarian, and I'm a utilitarian. I believe in what's best for the most people, and there's too many psychopaths out there. So that's just, of course, my dream. Doesn't mean it's ever going to happen. But do I think that that would solve all our problems? Absolutely not. But cheers to a good start. That actually brings up an old joke. What do you call 1,000 lawyers on a desert island or something like that? A good start? That popped into my head because, yeah, that's exactly the mentality people have, because most lawyers are cheats and bullshitters. So, not all. There are people out there who help others, and that's the problem. They kind of get swept up in the mix. But, yeah, generally, anybody who abuses others should just be put away, and not at taxpayers' expense. So I'm going to flip back through the comments because I want to make sure that I keep up. Adam says, basically, how much do you think it's life choices versus genetics? I think it's both, and I think it's also your parents' life choices. Everything is, because life choices create epigenetics, which we pass on to our kids. Like the foods you eat affect what your kids can digest, that kind of stuff. So, health problems are a lot about genetics, says Adam. Oh, because it was, yeah, smokers into their 90s. Yeah, absolutely. You are correct. Hell, I smoked for 25 years. My wife just quit smoking, but we still vape. But I feel my lungs are much clearer. However, I have a history of cancer in my family. My dad died of lung cancer, my grandpa died of lung cancer, and my grandma died of lung cancer. Does that mean I'm going to? Hope not. But it did get me concerned because my dad died at like 42. And when I hit 42, I was like, fuck, I got to quit smoking. Well, it wasn't just that. I had quit smoking, actually. I quit smoking when I was 40. That was my goal. I said, I'm going to do it when I'm 20. I didn't do it. I'm going to do it when I'm 30. I'm going to do it when I'm 40. And I finally was like, I'm not going past 40 being a smoker. But I still vape. And I think that genetics play a huge role. A huge role. But I also think that we can help to kind of ease that by having better habits than our parents did. So, hey Chris, Infected Chris, good to see you, my friend. Barry Cooper's official. Whoa, you can zoom in. Hey guys, hi. What's going on? It's the creepy stream. Whoops. You can't even zoom in on when I use this front camera here, or the rear camera, whatever it is. I can't zoom in usually, but I guess I can here. There we go. That's better. Barry Cooper's official, never get busted again. That's funny. Powell's Books. Oh God, I think I got, oh yeah. Powell's Books is down in Portland. Cindy says, train 13 hits. Well, it's funny you say that because I've actually, speaking of 13 hits, because I mentioned earlier I'd taken a 10 strip of acid. I've actually taken acid where 2 hits was stronger than that 10 hits. The one thing to know about LSD, especially if you took it after 2000s and before the 2010s, so anytime 10 years ago to 20 years ago, there was some pretty shitty acid out there. It was pretty fucking weak. And it's coming back around now, full time, big time. I mean, there's blue, yellow, orange, purple pyramids, or basically little gel tabs, which we didn't have very much access to when I was younger. But I had a friend who made a bunch of mescaline. I took that at Bonnaroo and watched the Beastie Boys and Fish. And I remember that was a great experience. Mescaline is my favorite. But LSD was a revolution because it's a small package, tiny, tiny thing. You can carry it in your wallet for years and forget about it. And then be like, oh, yeah, I have a hit of acid in my wallet. After 5 years of being in a hot wallet, carrying it around every day, and take it and you'll get high as shit. It doesn't. In fact, a whole group of people took Delsyd, which is Delsyd, Delsyd, was the very first LSD by Sandoz Laboratories. That's what they called it. And they found an old vial, or an ampule, as they call them, the little glass vials with a built-in glass top. And a bunch of the original scientists and psychedelic advocates got around and they got a hold of this original Sandoz vial like maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago. But it had been decades since this was made. LSD was just as good as the day it was made. It just depends on keeping it in the right condition. It's an extremely stable molecule, whereas psilocybin degrades into psilocin, which can degrade into other things, I believe, which is the active component in magic mushrooms. And most drugs can degrade, but LSD will keep its shape and form for a long time. And it scared the shit out of the government when they realized they couldn't reel it back in. And they were the ones to advocate it. The government was the ones to buy all of the world's supply of LSD, bring it into the U.S., test it on U.S. soldiers, U.S. citizens, unwittingly, MK Ultra, which is a real government project. They tested it on not just soldiers and individuals, but various workers. They would take strangers to motels and pretend that they were hooking up with a hooker, and then give them LSD and watch them through a one-way mirror. They gave who knows how deep it really went, but the idea was, can you control people's minds with LSD? And it didn't turn out to work that way. Didn't mean they didn't try, but so yeah. In the mid 90s, there was some really good acid. Yeah, Leslie says 94. Well, yeah, 1990, yeah, strong. That's the thing. 90 was the year that, that was before this big bust in 2000 where a dude got busted up in, I think, Canada. It was this whole drug den, psychedelic. This dude was horrible. I don't know. It was like the LSD cave. There's a whole Vice story about it. Highly recommended. It's old school, but yeah, that 90s acid was fucking strong, dude. That shit was so strong. And the best acid I ever had was Felix the Cat. And some dude gave me 6 hits for $10. Told me to just take one. I've told this story before, but I got back, took one, didn't feel it quickly, which usually means it's good because it doesn't hit me quickly. It means it's pure. Then I took 2 more, and then it started to slightly hit me, and I was like, screw it, I'll just take the last 3. And then it all hit me at once. I was so not scared, but I just wanted it to end. I laid there in like a kind of a coma. I couldn't even enjoy it. It was too much. That 6 hits ruined me. I didn't take acid for like 10 years after that until I met my wife, and then we started taking mushrooms. Then I found acid again because it kind of disappeared right around that same time. It just happened to be around the late 90s when I took that. And then I just, no, I'm not interested. And I'll say I didn't even really know anything about magic mushrooms for at least 3 years after I started taking psychedelics. I had already tried LSD so many times before somebody's like, hey, try these. And it hit me totally differently. As I've always said, like, LSD is more jagged and mushrooms are more round. LSD is more party. Mushrooms are more isolate. And for me, it's kind of just about. And psychedelics are huge right now. I mean, I'm so glad to see that they're in the public sphere and that most people are willing to look past their prior prejudice and bullshit about psychedelics. I don't want to say I told you so. I don't want to feel vindicated. I don't want to say, as a young kid that was told you're just a druggie, you don't know what you're talking about, that all of a sudden these same people, these yuppies, all of a sudden just they want to take mushrooms. Oh, you're not just a dirty hippie. Maybe you knew what the fuck you were talking about, you know? But I'm not like that. No, it's just kind of funny, you know? Some of these same people. Uh, the Silicon Valley thing with the whole microdosing is a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion. I don't. I know most people are totally supportive of it. I think it's nonsense. Microdosing is just being a fucking pussy and not taking a big dose. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say it doesn't work for people. Here's the thing. People say, well, if I microdose regularly, then I feel better. You probably do because it's a serotonin modulator in a way. But it's not that modulation that does the big changes. It's the trip that puts you in your place and reminds you that you're just a fucking peon in this universe, yet at the same time you're everything. It's the experience of tripping with other people in a room and talking about your issues and processing it the next day, especially, that really has longevity. So you can take a little bit of mushroom every day, fine, or LSD, whatever you want, feel good about it. But the truth is, and this is the way it's always traditionally been used, big doses once in a while. It's ceremonial. It's not meant to just be popped like a fucking vitamin. So fuck microdosing. I think it's bullshit. I can't help it. I think it's a big trend and I think it's going to fade out. There, I got it off my chest. I know a lot of people are really stoked about it and they think it's great, but I also think the placebo is great. And I think that if you take these psychedelics every day, you're totally abusing them and not using them the way that they were intended. So, moving on. As far as psychedelic mushrooms, I don't think a person needs a large dose. I think having an eighth is a pretty good dose. I think a 5 gram hero dose, as you know, McKenna called it, really depends on the type of mushroom. Sometimes 3 to 4 grams is enough. Depends on your weight, your body weight, your experience, the type of mushroom. There's golden teachers, there's penis envies, there's laughing gyms, which are totally different. There's so many different types of psychedelics that there's no way to really say this is the proper grams. You have to feel it out. Putting it in capsules, in my opinion, is the best way because it hits you quicker, because you don't have to digest a bunch of fungi, but also it wears off quicker, so you can have a good 3 to 4 hour experience, get to sleep, and still get the same benefits from it. But ultimately, you're in it for the long haul if you take mushrooms. They are amazing, and I'm scared of them. I mean, I, I've taken a lot of mushrooms, but I only take them when I have the time to sit on my couch quietly, listen to Pink Floyd, and do nothing else. I'm backing up here to the comments. Oh, Cindy, I was awake 3 days and nights on those 13 hits. I know how strong it was. Dude, that's the thing. It's too easy to eat too much, and it can ruin you. But don't let it, because LSD can be phenomenal in the right dose. Look, I'm almost like, I feel like a wuss for the amounts I've been taking. I used to take like 3 hits every time, 2 to 3 hits minimum. Now I'm taking like 1 tab, and I'm happy. 1 gel tab, and I'm like, woo, like, wow, it was great. Especially if you come out of the concert and mix it with nitrous and stuff. But that's, neither here nor there. Don't want to get into that one. Was Dip says, I ate too much THC, a whole 7.5 milligrams, and I was like, I bet watching Carpo video would calm me down. And here you are going live. Right, what's up, my friend? That's not too much, my friend. I've taken a lot more, but it depends on you, I guess. Maybe that is too much. Some people, it's crazy. I've heard some people can take a lot, like up to a gram of extract and nothing. Some people take like 5 milligrams and they're fucked up. So it's because your body metabolizes THC differently. So the only thing I can say to somebody who feels too high on THC is just ride it out, man. Ride it out. I'm with you, bro. I'm with you. I'm going to hit it up with you. But I take the shortcut route. People wouldn't think this, but taking marijuana edibles can be worse and scarier than psychedelics. I've become very paranoid, and this is because you're disrupting your endocannabinoid system in your body, as opposed to your serotonin receptors or dopamine, depending on which psychedelic you're taking. So, without getting all technical and pretending like I'm smart, LSD and psilocybin, which is the ingredient magic mushrooms, both kind of mimic serotonin and they fit those receptors. The reason why LSD lasts so long, like 8 hours or longer, is because it fits that receptor so well that it not only fits in where the serotonin goes, but it actually it closes this little flap over the THC. You can look this up. It's fascinating. I mean, I've always been interested in how this works. I still don't get it. But for some, it doesn't even do this with serotonin, but with LSD it does. And it covers it up and it holds it in there. And sometimes the key that fits the lock, like serotonin, will go in and then it can leave again, right? LSD doesn't do this. It dissolves in the receptor and becomes its basic constituents, from what I recall. It locks in for the long haul. This is why, okay, so you can take LSD, trip for 8, 9 hours, and then finally get to sleep if you're lucky. And then wake up like 3 or 4 hours later and feeling really totally rested. Like for me, even if I stay up all night tripping, I'll go to bed at like say 6 a.m., wake up at 10 a.m., feeling great. And the whole rest of the day is about life conversations, having these deep discussions with people. And that's why if you take it by yourself, you don't have anybody to bounce these ideas off of. You don't have anybody to help you through it. This is why I've actually considered, when I was tripping last time, I thought I want to do like tripsitter.com. That was the joke name for it, but really rent myself out as somebody who's willing to go to people's houses and they would pay me to sit with them and trip with them, basically. Like that would be something that would be a type of not just counseling, but allowing them to talk through their own shit. Just being a friend, just being somebody to sit and trip with people who want to trip but don't have anybody to trip with, and allow them to kind of unload their thoughts. That could be a huge burden for somebody, but I think it might be a really rewarding experience. And I was joking with my wife. I was like, how much would I charge for something like that? Like $1,000? Like seriously, to sit with people. Because I ended up sitting with this guy and telling him kind of halfway about that. And he goes, that's a great idea. He's like, I live in Santa Barbara and there's all these people down there who are like desperate. They're like, people with money that just want to take psychedelics but don't really know anything about it. I was like, fuck. But I don't want to capitalize on other people. And there we are back at the old catch-22. It's not about the money, but people want to pay the money for the service, and they're willing to pay some douchebag to pretend he's a guru. I'd rather just go there in normal clothes and say these guys are bullshit. The gurus with their styrofoam cups down in South America, you go down there, you pay them $1,000 and do an ayahuasca ceremony, and they pretend like they're doing something. Fuck all that. You can do this with people within your own communities that know what works for people in their own communities. Talking through shit. Like I've heard people saying that they went to these ceremonies and then nobody spoke English. It's like, dude, you need to be able to talk about your shit. That's the whole point of doing psychedelics. And I ended up talking about psychedelics on this video, didn't I? Go figure. I almost took some tonight. but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It's too much of a burden and an obligation. And it looks like I just hit the 1 hour mark. And as I said, I was going to do a 1 hour video. Hello, Space Dog. It's good to see you, my friend. Leslie says, as you get older, you seem to down your dose. That's true. I think it's because I want to explain this, why as you get older, you tend to take less of psychedelics. And when you're young, a lot of people take a lot more. I think it's because when you're young, you don't really know reality that well yet. Not in a bad way, but like, seriously, you can take a lot and go, whoa, and change your baseline reality for a while, but it doesn't seem that big of a change because it's like life's always in flux. You have emotions all over the place. But as you get older, you begin to know what it feels like to have a stable, normal feeling day to day. You go to work, you come home, whatever your routine might be, you know your baseline feeling, and that's why you know when something's off. And that's why you can kind of feel that afterglow from psychedelics a lot better as you get older, therefore you need less. You also realize it's not about how high you get. I don't redose on things. I never have. I want to make this clear too. I'm a very, 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 very responsible psychedelic user and drug user in general. I enjoy using substances. I won't deny that. I always have. All of them, every one of them. I pretty much every drug. I mean, that sounds harsh, but at one time or another in my life, I've tried everything. Doesn't mean I like it. Not Flocka. No, don't start asking me if I've tried these weird like trank and all that shit. No, but yeah, I've tried Fent. The only thing I've never done is put a needle in my arm. I'll make that clear. And I told myself when I was younger, I said, no matter what I do and no matter what I try in my life, I will not put a needle in my arm. But even that, I was almost willing to compromise if it was in a doctor's setting and I had DMT. And I was able to properly dose out the DMT experience. Dr. Rick Strassman, who wrote a book about DMT called The Spirit Molecule, great book. He did all these experiments with people. He was able to got approval to do DMT trials, and the people had these life-changing experiences. And I suppose I should talk about that one before I go, because DMT is something that, okay, if psychedelic mushrooms like psilocybin bring you closer to the earth and to each other, DMT is here to do the exact opposite. It tells you that everything's fucked up. There's a crazy universe beyond this where there's weird sounds. It sounds like a goddamn dial-up modem from the 90s, and there's weird creatures swimming around in circles and dancing and laughing at you. Experience is just continuing. Everyone has it. It's universal. Some sort of weird riddle or perplexing, why are you here in this realm, that people get when they smoke DMT. And it's so mind-blowing that I just have always had some around available, and I just don't smoke it. The last time I did was at a campfire. Everyone was asleep, and I just pulled out my little stash that I carry around. Maybe I'll try it again. Popped a bunch in, and I took a huge hit, and I was just like, the fire started spinning with all these little creatures, and it was just absolutely amazing. So, yeah, DMT is its own thing. DMT is a completely special animal. Maybe I'll try it again soon. It's been a while. Anyway, I want to go because I'm kind of getting hungry again, but I see I got some people on here watching, but if anybody has questions, maybe I'll just take a quick break and get something to eat or something for like 5 minutes. Haven't done it in a long time ago. Exactly. Don't let fear control you. Psychedelics are extremely important. Morning coffee for Space Dog, huh? Does that mean you're overseas, or does that mean you're just getting up to go to the graveyard shift? Shane says, in connection. Okay, Mikey says, does your dog know when you're tripping? I don't know. I really don't know. distract. Shane says, do you feel like your phone is... But I also mute shit, or I try to mute things. Looks like my phone turned off for a second there. It's a responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility to take LSD with a stranger with no experience. Yes, it is. That's why I think $1,000 would be a fair price. No, it's not about the price, but that's a huge burden. That's like an entire day of work, dude. I mean, I can make that as a carpenter, and it'd be a lot less work. It's about like feeling what's fair. That $1,000 is just kind of a half joke. I don't even know what I would charge somebody for something like that. Maybe it would be on a sliding scale. I think that would be fair. Somebody who really needs help, who doesn't have much money, I could do it for free. But some yuppie in the valley, charge them an arm and a leg. Fuck them. They got money to blow anyway on stupid statues and shit. Kidding, of course. I won't even rip off rich people because I'm too nice. Crocodile doesn't sound safe. No, it doesn't. I haven't tried that one either. Eric says I have some MDMA. Looks gray ash or rocks or something. Yeah, it can look pretty. It kind of looks like amber. Like it can look grayish brown. MDMA is a very unique substance and should be taken with caution. I've had people I know that brag about taking 0.5 gram of MDMA. They're idiots. I've never taken more than 1.5, which is 1/10 of a gram is a point. So it would be like 0.15 of a gram or 15%. Some people take up to 1 gram because they abuse it and continuously have to take it. I only say one thing about MDMA. When you take it, it's necessarily true. You can renew if you take proper doses. But I highly recommend against taking large doses and especially against redosing. A lot of people like to take MDMA and then when it starts to wear off, there's this feeling of, I want to keep going. I just want to feel good. And you just can't. You just can't. Don't do it. Redosing, actually, it totally works against you. It's been years since I've looked at the specific science as to how that one works, but let's just say, trust me on this. You do not want to be redosing on anything, and especially not LSD or mushrooms. You also should not take LSD or mushrooms or any psychedelic within a week because your body will build up a tolerance to it, and eventually you'll just be wasting. I have a friend who used to come over, a couple different friends who every time they come to visit, they're tripping or they would be tripping. It's like every time they'd come over, they'd be on acid. And yeah, they drove to my house. I'm like, to me, acid is so sacred. I will not drive. I don't want to get pulled over. I don't want to have any issues. I could drive on low doses, but I guess I've realized they got to the point where it just doesn't even affect them like it should. And it's like chasing the dragon, but very few people get to that point. Most people respect it. Most people do. Not because they have to. Well, I should say not because they want to, but because they have to. LSD doesn't want you to abuse it. It'll kick your ass every time. Machine elf gestures. Yeah, a lot of these guys talked about these. McKenna, I think it was the one that called them self-transforming machine elves. For anybody wondering, that's what you supposedly see on DMT. And when you put that into somebody's mind, instantly they're going to see that. So what I've said is I don't want to inform anybody on what to expect their first time. Just let them report what they see. However, there does seem to be an alarming amount of people who see the same thing, and often it's quite psychedelic like that. So, Germany, Space Dogs in Germany, 7 a.m. Well, I hope you have a good day at school, or work, school. One more beer. Never been to Berlin. Too much redosing MDMA gives me flu-like symptoms, says Luis. Yeah, Luis, that's a great point. I've heard this from people. that redosing can cause other, well, not just flu-like symptoms. Here's the thing. Almost every time I take MDMA, within a couple days, I get a cold. Now, I would say maybe half the time, not every time. But this especially happens when A, I don't eat properly beforehand, B, don't drink enough water, or I'm just partying too hard and I stay up too late, but taking too much. So, as I said before, I've taken up to 0.15, right? Generally, I think it's 1 milligram per kilogram, is what they say. Wait, I think it's half a milligram per kilogram. Pretty, no, it's 1 milligram per kilogram. So for me at 160 something pounds, whatever that would be, and yeah, I'm pretty light, I'm scrawny, but that would be, say, 80 milligrams. And so that's what I take now. Instead of taking 120 milligrams, which is what I used to take, I take 80 milligrams. So it's 2/3. And you know what? I dance better and happier. I go to bed on time. I feel good. I don't feel bad the next day. If you take too much, you're going to get what they call the Monday. Well, I'm not going to get into that one, but some people feel really crappy on Monday, let's call it. And I definitely would not recommend that you take huge doses because you can deplete your serotonin to the point where you feel like complete shit. And I've really never felt that way. I've heard it from a million people, but I'm like, how much did you take? Oh, took like 300 milligrams, and then we took acid the next day. I'm like, dude, you need your fucking sleep, boy. Get your fucking sleep. I'm telling you, so many people do not get enough sleep when they're taking psychedelics. And that ends up costing them a lot. It cost them their fun the next day. I force my fam to go to sleep. Like my oldest son, he's 28, and he likes to stay up and party. He goes to like events with us and stuff. He's an adult. He can do what he wants. But I try to tell him, force yourself to sleep. Close your eyes. If you've been up partying all night, don't do it. Give yourself at least 4 hours. Just 4 hours. Maybe just 3 hours. Enough to at least recover because your body needs sleep. It's like, here I am talking to the kids. Get your damn sleep, you psychedelic heads. But, you know, going to a lot of shows and stuff, you meet a lot of people and a lot of young people that you want to protect. Keep them from being idiots, right? And we try. So thanks for coming, everybody. I appreciate you all. And I'm going to come back next time and do another live cast next Sunday around the same time. And I will, I think next Sunday, but I'm going to post a link way ahead of time. I'm going to let you all know. Until then, I wish you all well. Thanks for coming along. I'm going to go eat some food. Peace and love to all of you. I'll see you next time.